Let's take a closer look at estimates in agile software development. Developers hate making them, and managers want them. There's a hot debate over whether they work or not. The first step when talking about improving estimates or replacing them with something else is to figure out whether they work for you and your team or not, and that's what we will do in this video. When we make estimates, there is always an assumption that we can convert the estimate to some idea of how long it will take to do something. For example, we may estimate a user story or feature in story points, multiply that with a scale factor, and end up with a time duration. We may also, depending on which estimation and planning method we use, add a time buffer, as you would with critical path or critical chain. At the core, though, is this assumption that we have a linear relationship between our estimate and the actual duration. Of course, we do know that there is a degree of uncertainty in our basic model. You can see what that looks like in the diagram to the right. There is random variation, and the larger the piece of work we estimate, the more uncertainty we have about when we will be done. Still, even with the uncertainty, the idea is that we have a basically linear relationship between estimate and actual duration. But do we? What if we look at some real data from a real team in a real project? To the right, you can see data from a development team working in a multi-team environment. Note that overall, a 1-point story may take as long as a 5-point or 8-point story. Most stories are done fairly quickly, but it is not unusual for a story to take 25 to 50 days. We have two 1-point stories that took more than 100 days and one 3-point story that took more than 200 days. For this team, the estimates were actually damaging. They led to making unrealistic plans, and when the plans collapsed, nobody understood that part of the problem was the unrealistic estimation and planning method itself. So let's have a look at how you can figure out whether your team has this problem. Here we can see what I did. I extracted cycle times from Jira in this case. And to get the cycle time, I took the time from in progress to done for each item. And then I also extracted story points. Depending on your Jira setup, you may have to do this manually, or you can do it automatically via a plugin. So, and I made sure to have plenty of data. My experience is that for doing something like this, I need at least 40 to 50 data points. And in this case, I had more than 100 to get reasonably reliable results. Then I created a scatter plot. So I just took my story points and plotted them against the cycle time. And you can see the result here. It's the same as in the presentation sequence you saw before. Now I did something else that is also useful. I calculated the correlation coefficient using a function built into Excel. Now the correlation coefficient that tells you how well two data series match up with each other. If there had been a perfect correlation, we would have a 1 here, a reverse correlation where one series goes up and the other goes down, that would be a -1. And if it's completely random, then the correlation is 0. And as you can see here, it's 0.0027, and that's as close to 0 as you will get. So in this case, we can see in the scatter plot and we can see in the correlation coefficient that there is absolutely no correlation between the estimated story points and the actual cycle times.